for attending Tuesday's meeting. We'll start with the, if you want to rise with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have us coming out. Okay, there, that's better. We got fairly full agenda today and I have to be mindful. We have a Board of Health at 10 a.m. So I have to be mindful of that time. We'll go through regular agenda. I am at the end of consent agenda. I am going to bring Senator Wilson up. He has a couple items for us, and so it's a little bit out of order, but one of the items he wants to speak on was an item on the consent agenda. So we'll do it at that time and then move forward. So at this time, I would ask Commissioner Mortensen to give us a review of the minutes.
Good morning, everyone. I did, as usual, review the minutes of the activities last week, and I move to approve those minutes.
Any questions on the minutes? I see no one. I see no hands. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. Passes. Okay, consent agenda items. We have a call for a public hearing coming up in May 9th. This is approved to establish some no parking zones. This was at the request of the sheriff's office and forget who the other department there was in an area, but we'll have a public hearing on that on May 9th, 2023, 9:45. So you'll be able to chime in on that. We'll be putting out a bid for the 2023 pavement overlay project. And that bid for May 16th, 2023 at 11 a.m. is when those bids would come in. If I'm reading that right. We have a completion letter to General Mechanical for finish work on the Hall of Justice valve replacement project. Total cost of that ended up $90,195.21. The original bid was $93,494.43. So there are times when we come underneath bids. So and then numerous letters. We had a letter in March from Governor Inslee reappointing, I'll probably butcher this name, Marcel Goulet to serve on the Boundary Review Board. Letter from Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. It's basically, it was a response to a letter we sent and they were asking for a little more information. Another letter from FERC, just an acknowledgement of information we sent them in January. Another letter from FERC, an acknowledgement of information we sent to them in December. Another letter from FERC, which is an acknowledgement of information we sent to them in February. And we have a letter to Senator Wilson regarding the Patriot rail abandonment. A letter to Connie, Rivera, Washington State Department of Commerce regarding BroadBand's office wrapper design study. It's basically, it's a study for the county that it's not a cost to the county. There's no, sorry, my truck took on a deer this morning and I guess I got a little deer on my hand. Request for, it's not a cost to the county. It's a study to help us identify areas within our county that don't have broadband, which I can say is probably a lot of it. But anyway, it's it's a thing that I think it'll help. There's a broadband team that works on this for the county. It'll probably help them. It's not a cost you're incurring, so we sent a letter asking them to do that. Voucher, we have a voucher for 771150. This is just ratified payment of expenses incurred from February for the Drainage Improvement District, and then various vouchers and warrants in the amount of $919,090.31. Before we ask for a vote on that, I'll give Senator Wilson, I'll give you floor time.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chair Dahl, I'm, for the record, Jeff Wilson, Senator for the 19th Legislative District. Mr. Chair, would you like me to speak on the consent calendar, or would you like me to slide on it? Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Chairman Dahl.
I know you had a few topics you wanted to cover.
Yes, sir.
Let's go ahead and do that.
Thank you. And I'll be brief on there. I do appreciate the correspondence is relating to the meeting that I held on the 14th of April concerning the Patriot rail line and the process. It's been a very lengthy process. It's gone on for years. And I believe that I'm now getting a clear picture of the local jurisdictions and stakeholders as to their position on this project. And quite frankly, that was my intent. And to also take any information or that I could apply in my service to the state Senate as I'm the vice chairman of the Rail Caucus in Olympia. So there's a lot going on with rail, and that does include trails or any other uses. So I do appreciate the correspondence and really the clear direction from the Board of Commissioners here. So it's much appreciated. In fact, I'm proud to say you went first and the first to return back information, and I appreciate that. I look forward to hearing back from others. Now on the legislative front, we adjourned, what we call sine die, both the House of Representatives and the State Senate. We adjourned our 105-day, very long session this year, Sunday night. We really ran till close to about 10 o'clock. And one of the reasons I would like to discuss that with you is because there was a bill that essentially died under procedure in the House of Representatives known as Senate Bill 5536. We call it the Blake decision. And for the record, in 2021, the legislature took up a decision that was based on a court case of Blake, which was dealt with knowingly possession of, say, let's just use the word drugs. And at what time in the legislature we had reduced and somewhat decriminalized to a certain point the possession of drugs 2 years ago. Felonies were removed, and essentially we went down to the level of, let's say, misdemeanor. We know that that was bad legislation. We've had 2 years of data, 2 years of troublesome and worrisome known facts now that substance abuse has plagued Washington State as any other state. And we've met our match through components that deal in the words of fentanyl. We've never seen this before. The legislature made a very good attempt this year with Senate Bill 5536, which I did vote for out of the Senate, which had or was intended to correct I guess what we had done in 2021. And there was elevations up to gross misdemeanor. There was some sentencing guidelines and possession and a number of things that was well vetted and well worked. But again, unfortunately, on Sunday night, that legislation died. So 2 things can happen now. The governor can call a special session and can call us back in under that topic to readdress this. And I would sense that if that were to happen, it would probably happen fairly soon, or at least in May, because the original legislation of 2020 has a sunset provision in it that as of July 1st, that legislation essentially in lay terms doesn't exist anymore. So what I'm here to this morning to make sure to address the commissioners with is if the Lake decision is not called back into session and we don't address it under special session between now and July 1st, local jurisdictions, counties and cities will in fact have the opportunity, if you so choose, to say, put these things on your books: possession, use, paraphernalia. These are things that you will have the opportunity to put forth on a local basis. Now, I'm a fan of local control. I've never been shy about this. I'm here today to say this is one of your options. I know that if you would consider anything along those lines, there are a number of trade organizations to consider, and of course, the local district and superior court judges. But time is of the essence, because if we do not reconvene as a legislative body, July 1st will be July 1st. That is something that I would hope is addressed in some form, because I don't quite think we're ready in this capacity to be so lawless on July 1st. And we do know that drug overdose deaths are now the leading cause of death in Washington state under the age of 60, with 1,799 deaths alone last year. And we're pacing for 30 overdose deaths every week in King County of this year. So with that, I wanted to make sure to relay to you that things are not necessarily done. The legislative session, though, had some very good points to it that I would like to say. That under the words of bipartisanship, these are rare, but this was a budget year for transportation, operating, and capital. I am proud to say that our operating budget, although enormous, $70 billion, it came without direct tax increases. And I think that that is something that I would like to mention for the record, that a lot of services and whatnot go forward, and it's a very, very large budget in itself, but it didn't come with what it has been coming with since I've had the privilege to serve the 19th district. Usually there's a caveat of more tax burden placed on the Washington citizens. And I, quite frankly, I've never been shy to say that enough is somewhat enough. Narrowly, we escaped this legislative session with Senate Bill 5770, which of course would increase the property tax cap currently, which is set at 1%. There was a bill to raise that to 3%. And in fact, that would generate billions of dollars for Washington state and local governments, but that would have been on the backs of the taxpayers. And in lay terms, that would have dramatically termed out to be property tax increases in a time we don't need to do. In addition, the real estate excise tax didn't make it to the finish line, so there was some very good points of this year's session. However, I will caution everybody that those bills are coming back. They will be reintroduced in our short session for the 2024 session. So I will always respect and seek the input of this board and the citizens of Cowlitz County as I get ready to head back in just a few months to Olympia. We were very successful on the transportation budget. And I'm proud to say that just down the street here, there's a railroad crossing that the city of Kelso has trying to complete. That's an important project. There were a number of projects also around this building, such as the Kelso train station, which serves as an intermodal facility. It's not just trains, it's buses. It connects everybody. So there were some fairly good projects in the transportation and capital budget. So with that, I will take any questions because, Mr. Chairman, I do appreciate that you allowed me to get in front of the microphone here today. And I much appreciate the time given, but given the circumstances, I also I felt it was important that we give a quick brief now in case things need to be adjusted before July 1st.
Commissioners?
So the deadline on July 1st, let's say we get there and we haven't had a change up in Olympia, that means we can pass something. How long does that something last? That is to say, if you guys meet for the next 3 months and you come up with a solution, that'll supersede what we've done here?
It could. If we were to be reconvene, of course, there's two methods that an emergency, or excuse me, special session can come about. One is the call of the governor, and he would set the item. But also allows us to get together and populate other agenda items. But I would suspect it would be over the one item, the Blake fix, as we would call it. If cities and towns, and there already are some, Bellingham is a recent one that comes to mind, that had put ordinances on the book. And they weren't allowed, of course, to exceed the existing Blake legislation of 2021. In other words, the days of the felony still weren't able to be applied for the books of, say, simple possession. You could go into misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor. And if we can fix a get called back in under special session, that fix would also, I would assume, have to have an emergency clause. Because usually when legislation is passed, there's an effective date unless it has that emergency clause, and that would put it into effect the moment that it's being signed. There's another way to go into special session, and that's the legislative bodies can do so themselves with 2/3, and yet that is very rarely ever happened. I don't have any specific knowledge when the legislature's been successful in calling itself back into session. But if you were to put something on the books prior to any legislation that would have an effective date before July 1st of this year, then yours stands. Could it be undone? Absolutely. But I'll offer right now as we speak, Commissioner Mortensen, that the Capitol is closed. The governor had the People's Building closed this morning. The public is not allowed into the legislative building, until at least noon today. And for reasons I could only take out of an email I received, and that's because the governor is signing 3 very controversial bills from 10 o'clock on this morning, 2 House bills and a Senate bill that deal with guns, highly debated this year. So I don't know for what reason, but it's closed. So a lot of things will happen. And I mentioned those bills, Commissioner Mortensen, because one of those bills, House Bill 1240, has an emergency clause. And just as soon as Governor Inslee signs that this morning sometime, it becomes the law of the land. And a lot of that would suffice as if also for, say, drug legislation, possession, use, or whatever. I would like to offer an opinion, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being a citizen of Cowlitz County for headed to 60 years now, you know, there's a lot of things that we seem to have that are very successful as we've gone through the ages of drug use and drug changes throughout society. And one of them that is sponsored by this body is, say, therapeutic courts or drug courts. Highly successful. And that was one of my biggest regrets, Mr. Chairman, why I voted no against the original Blake decision to essentially decriminalize drugs in 2021, because I felt it undermined the ability to get those that are struggling with addiction, those that were going through all forms of pain and suffering, to get them into therapeutic courts, treatment. And I believe that we missed this opportunity, obviously, as a legislature. Maybe we can fix it if there's a special session, or maybe the Board of Cowlitz County Commissioners could always keep an eye on that. That's what I'm asking for, is whatever you do, if you do anything at all. I am a big fan of the Cowlitz County drug courts and their success stories. And this is based on personal experience, not as a client, but I observed. I used to sit in the back of the rooms to learn the stories, and I've seen the outcomes. I've attended graduations in this very room. And I wish Washington State would have followed more of that, say as a role model. So I'm just encouraging to get my 2 cents in on drug courts.
Thank you.
Senator, I did have one question. The biggest ask that the county has made of the legislature in the last quite a few years is funding to resolve the traffic congestion at the foot of the bridge. And my understanding is that not only did we not get extra money to finish the project, but the project funding was stripped out and the project is dead. Is that, I mean, is there something else going on that we need to be aware of?
No, I will clarify though. The project you're referring to is known as IWOW, the Industrial Way, Oregon Way intersection. It started in 2015 with my predecessor, Senator Dean Tacko, had led that charge in order to reinvigorate that intersection. But Commissioner Weber, that was also based on information in 2000 considerations, which includes, at that time, we were talking coal export terminals. We were talking for a use and a potential demand, not just for vehicular traffic, but for unit train traffic. When I came into service in 2020, I brought back the meetings on this. I reached out to WashDOT and I asked them to start reconvening these meetings. Let's modernize this project, see if the need was still the same, and re-engage the stakeholders and the shareholders in this project. It's already 5 years old. Is this something we need to go forward on? And for the record, I reached out to former Senator Tacko, which I did never receive a response from, to get updated on that project. So I called the meetings and we had these meetings over the last year and a half, and we found out that we could potentially get to a concept design, as you know, to make that intersection a much better intersection with or without unit trains. The problem is that a $78 million project now turned into a $240 million project. For whose trains? What for? The project at IWOW is not officially dead, but I will tell you it is stalled. The project that received some of that funding is known as the rail separation project in the Aberdeen area in Grays Harbor, still in the 19th district. And I think that's something I'm very proud of, that the money did not evaporate. The money was still used in a shovel-ready project that is urgent, that can begin, and it can be fully funded. Going forward, I don't believe there was any support from the governor's office to fund the IWOW project. In fact, I saw 0, 0, 0 going forward. And I worked with the delegation of the 19th, and we were unable to work with transportation leaders to secure any more funding at this time for IWOW. So we put our money for the best use. And I'll offer up that as a community, we have a bigger issue. It's not the intersection. There's no unit trains that I know of going west past that intersection. But what I do know is the Lewis and Clark Bridge is 94 years old. We have a 2-lane structure that doesn't get very much attention. It seems that the Portland-Vancouver Bridge gets a lot of the bridge attention on the media and planning. But yet we've learned that just 2 weeks ago, there was a floor brace that needed an emergency repair to that bridge. And DOT swiftly went into action and repaired that. And I'm grateful for that, because we're in a position like no other community. We have a 2-lane bridge. And once you mess up 1 lane or 2 lanes, you're done. Whereas other large municipalities like Portland or Vancouver, they do have the bonus of having additional lanes. We're very vulnerable. So what I have had done, Mr. Weber, on this is I've asked Bill Fashing of the Council of Kayakan Governments to start the unified planning process to discuss this bridge, because the intersection is an accessory. The bridge is something we can't live without. And I've also asked for Senate hearings. As I serve on the Senate Transportation Committee, I have asked for hearings for us to convene as a workshop later this year to discuss this. And so what I'm really trying to say despite the long answer you got, Commissioner, and I apologize, is that I'm really focusing on priority based because we know that sometime this year, a biblical proportion shutdown is going to happen in our community on that bridge. For 6 days and 6 nights, that bridge is scheduled to be closed sometime this year for finger joint replacement. The problem is, to this date, as I sit here before you, we don't know when. That job originally was scheduled for as early as May 15th. There's no set date for that. But we've never had complete closures of that bridge for those consecutive days and nights since its construction 94 years ago. So along those lines, sorry to do that, but you got a very in-depth report as to the intersection had its value, but it didn't have its priority basis anymore. And I'm grateful for all the shareholders that took the time to attend those meetings that WashDOT put on and that I had helped organize so that we could come to a community decision that the simple way to put it, sir, is IWOW is stalled. It's not for now, but never done completely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think Senator Wilson, and I appreciate the audience indulgence. I need to get back on track here. And then are you, if you're sticking around, you can take some questions from people.
Always available for questions. And I want to thank you for the time. And I also want to thank the people behind me that let me somewhat cut in line. I didn't mean to do that. I appreciate that, to get this matter in front of you as quickly
Okay.
as possible.
Thank you. Any other questions on the agenda items?
Actually, with this quick interrupt, I dare say this was very useful from my perspective. I would suspect the audience feels that also, so we should do this more frequently.
Well, so much what we get so much influence from Olympia that you have to pay attention to that. So we always appreciate those when we have those opportunities.
I guess I could use a speaker.
You want to use that table, Ron?
Motion item 4A. Is it on?
Yeah.
Letters. Is that typical protocol that our governor would be the one appointing to our boundary review board, or is it just typical governor extending his boundaries?
You know, I don't know the answer to that one. If that's a government, is that a governor appointed position?
The law for boundary review boards does provide for one governor's appointee. I think we also appoint several. There are other interest groups that do appointments. So this is pro forma. Yeah.
Okay, but you answered my question that he's not in charge of all of those. Right?
No.
All of them. Or
Good.
any governor. Oh, just one position. Correct. Okay, I hear not representing them.
I don't really know. I know that there are commissions where we might select a person and submit it to the governor for approval. And I don't know whether that applies here.
Not in this case. So.
Okay.
Very good. I don't want the governor having that control over our county. I don't think you do either.
No, I agree. And I'll verify that it's just the one. Okay.
And to follow up, Senator Wilson on the Blake fix. I see that you.
Ron, is your microphone on? Is the green light on?
Oh, there it is. Now it's got the green light.
Okay. We can't get too far down the weeds because we're still on a consent agenda. But
Okay, well, just following on that one, the Blake fix is a great opportunity for you as our county leaders to take proactive, set up a workshop, get our sheriff involved and see what is an opportunity for this county. And we would get a chance to see where our sheriff stands and all of the traffic coming into this county from gosh only knows where and drugs.
thank you. Any other questions on the consent agenda?
You've got a hand up.
Keenan, Mr. Harvey, go ahead.
Yeah, commissioners, thank you. I had the opportunity to speak to our local Kelso City admin yesterday about the Blake decision. And to kind of piggyback on what Senator Wilson said, we might have the ability to pass our own ordinances. I do know that the local police chiefs, including the sheriff and the prosecutor, are meeting already to come up with a fix that will be in place or will be ready pending the July 1st date. Whether, you know, we don't know if there's going to be a special session or not, but I do know that they are developing a fix, and it will be something that's standardized to not bog down the courts and not keep things confusing for our court system. So I did have the opportunity to speak with them, and there will be something in place that is a collective agreement between all sheriffs and police entities that will be a fix for the Blake decision.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna have to move the Blake discussion to public comments when we get there, because we're on consent agenda. So if you have something that's on this consent agenda, go ahead.
We'll talk later.
Okay. Okay, I see nobody else. I'd entertain-
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda as talked about. Any other not seeing any? I would call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, thank you. Motion items, we have a bid award for Longview Auto and Tire. There we go.
Good morning, Commissioners. Savannah Clement with Public Services. We went out to bid in February to local agencies that could assist in our backup repairs, oil changes for our ER&R fleet. We received 2 bids. We would like to move forward with the lowest bid, which is Longview Tire. I have Sean Rowe here. He's our finance manager to go over some of those details as far as pricing and the contract amount. Anything else?
So Savannah, I appreciate you presenting this. You used an acronym that folks in the audience might not understand, ER&R.
ER&R is our fleet shop. It's called the Equipment Revolving Fund. It's essentially our pool where we include our roads vehicles for maintenance, and it's a special fund. It's an internal service fund.
Because we can use road tax monies for the repair of only those
Road
vehicles
equipment.
that fix roads.
That's
So we
correct.
kind of separate it. Otherwise, we'd call it the motor pool.
Right, and we do have the motor pool, just a little side note, which is servicing other department vehicles, so sheriff's vehicles, and then other smaller divisions.
Thanks.
Good morning, excuse me. So as Savannah said, we had 2 bids on this, one from Longview Tire and one from Bud Clary Ford. We would like to move forward with Longview Tire. The items that would be under scope of this agreement would be large to medium repairs, such as transmissions, motors, things of that nature, or other specialized repairs that would require specialized work. Or items for overflow nature, say if we are extremely busy in our shops, or would be like oil changes and other small maintenance items that we can provide good customer service to our clients there. This is not to an exceed value, so we can't predict how many vehicles we're going to see through the year, but that is a top end value and nothing that we are required to pay that value.
Okay. Do you know what you've what that expense has been in the past, roughly? I know it's hard to tell because vehicles do different things.
Yeah, year to year, it's difficult to put an average on there as we can see some significant spikes. I would estimate between $50,000 and $60,000 a year.
Okay. Any other questions?
I was gonna ask for clarification on that same issue. How did you choose 150,000 then?
We chose that as a higher end. As we said previously, it's hard to determine how many large repairs we're gonna have during the year. So we didn't want to have to come back again and again, and just want to do it one time.
Okay, so based on history, it was about half that. Okay. He's an engineer, factor two, safety.
Yeah. Any other comments? Hearing none, seeing no hands, I would call for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the bid award proposal to Longview Auto and Tire for labor, parts, equipment, and so forth as has been discussed.
One more call for questions. I see none. Call for the vote. In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. That passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Facilities maintenance, bid award approval for Apex Mechanical for replacement of boilers at both the county administration building, which is this one, and the annex building, which is right across, right over here.
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. Will Tossett, Facilities Maintenance. We went out to bid to replace the boilers, as you said, for the admin and annex building. The boilers are past end of life. They've been past end of life for many years. And we received two quotes. The lowest quote came from Apex Mechanical for a little over $300,000 to replace those boilers.
The other quote was pretty close, 383, so not
Yep.
a big disparity.
Yep.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? I hear none. I see no hands. So I would call for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we award the bid to Apex Mechanical as presented by staff.
Last call for questions. I would call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Information technology. This is if you remember, we had this before us and it went out to bid, I don't know, a little bit of time ago. And they've been working on the contract, so they've got hard numbers for us today, so we'll let him explain.
Good morning, community. I'm Kim Hort, IT Director. Commissioners, back in February, like the chairman presented, we went out to bid and awarded Worldwide Technologies. And we have been negotiating the terms of the contract and have come up with a final number. There was a difference from what was in the bid award in February, and I wanted to explain why there was a difference. There was solidification on the hardware that we would be acquiring. We added on the emergency 911 reporting, which is a requirement under various acts for our employee safety. And there was also sales tax that was not originally reflected in that number. So I'm requesting the board to approve the contract as presented for Worldwide Technologies in the total sum, of $647,511.
Questions from the board?
I think we've had a number of different workshops on it. I mean,
Yeah, we've beaten this one to death. The public might want a quick word on the reason the 911 add-on that you.
Absolutely.
Mm.
There's Carrie's Law and the Raybom Act, which requires that we have reporting of where somebody is making an emergency phone call. So it identifies the location and the room of where the person is calling from. And then I want to also add, I'm able to offset the cost by $80,000. I worked with Carolyn Fundingslin with a state Secretary of State grant to offset that cost by $80,000.
Okay. Any questions from the audience?
I also have.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, not a problem. Maintenance, how much is maintenance on this, or how much is included in there?
I would have to get my phone calculator out to break it out exactly. This is covering the 5-year term. So this
This
is.
is all the entire 5 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. It typically on hardware, software, you're expected to pay anywhere from 10 to 15% annually just to keep things updated.
Correct.
So that's maybe not as bad a price as I once thought.
At the end of 5 years, I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to do that.
Such an opportunity.
Yeah. Any questions from the audience? I have a question for you, and I ask it the same time. Any change in their mandate?
I did talk with staff and they said that they don't enforce the mandate. I don't know. I didn't follow up in regards to their policy actually being rescinded, but from staff, they said that
They don't enforce it?
no.
Yeah, I think that's probably fairly common. Okay. Any other questions for Kim? Hearing none, seeing no hands, I would call for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the bid award to Worldwide Technology as has been presented.
Last call. Okay, we call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for checking, at least asking the question on that. Last we have here is agreement approval with the Cowlitz County Humane Society. They were in, I don't know, a while back and did a presentation for us, and so we actually have them with us today. So I thank you for coming.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Darren Ullman. I'm the Executive Director with the Humane Society. And we are here today to ask for a new contract for 2023, which is a 10% increase over our previous contracts. And that 10% is to cover our costs for services that have increased substantially over the past year. And I'm available for any questions you may have.
Darren, the other entities that you contract with, Longview and Kelso and some of the other cities, have they already approved the 10%, or are we the first in the queue?
No, all the cities except for Longview have already agreed and have signed the contracts. We're just waiting for the county and for City of Longview, which I'm meeting with on Thursday.
And the reason for the 10% increase, just for review, normally that's a little bit higher than what we usually do on regular renewals.
Correct. We saw substantial increases in our costs of service over the past few years, since COVID really. And our insurance rates have gone up considerably. Our utility rates have gone up. Keeping in mind that these contracts fulfill about 60% of our revenue. So it doesn't cover everything, but it's we had to make these increases in order to meet our costs. And we're not trying to make a profit on the county. We're just trying to keep our services available to the community.
And has there been an uptick in the calls for service, that is abandoned animals or animals that being mistreated, or just sheer overwhelming neighborhoods?
Nationally, we saw about a 40% increase in animal intake, which was consistent with our rise. We are currently, our staff, I can't give you numbers off the top of my head. We're about on par with where we were last year, I believe. We might be a little bit higher. Initially, at the beginning of the year, it started out really strong, but then I think we've kind of settled into a routine. But spring and summer are coming, and that's our busy time. So we're anticipating quite the increase over the next several months.
Thank you.
Questions? You got a hand up. Shannon, go ahead.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can.
Awesome. So I have a question. I live in the Highlands, and I'm just curious in the county how that's gonna work. I don't see where the Humane Society has actually been doing their job. A friend of mine was walking his dog on the footpath and he and his dog were attacked by another dog. They called the Humane Society. It took over 24 hours for them to come. The gal who took the call said that she couldn't find his address. But yet she went to where the dog was at, the dog that was roaming. And that happens a lot here in the Highlands. They don't do their job. We call, nobody comes. I'm just wondering, so what do you do in the county if there's a situation and somebody calls and you can't find the address? I feel that is too much money to give you when I don't even see your trucks out here in the Highlands. And I drive out in the county a lot. Like my daughter lives out in Willow Grove. I go out in the county to go to church. I never see your vehicles. So I'm just curious, what would the money go towards? And if you don't have the numbers that our commissioners, our 3 commissioners are asking for, and you don't have them in front of you, I mean, that's poor work on your part. If you're asking for money, you're asking for a raise or extra portions, you should have those figures in front of you and saying, this is what is happening nationally. This is what's happening in the county. This is what's happening locally in Longview and Kelso. And this is why we need these funds. And you didn't do that. You kind of dropped the ball.
Well, actually, we had a couple workshops and he did provide all the numbers. We didn't ask him for a slideshow today because we've
And
seen
if
all the numbers.
everybody's not tuned in on those workshops, I didn't know about the workshops. And if everybody's not there and you're tuning in today and there's no, and he's like, oh, I don't have those numbers in front of me. I don't know it off the top of my head. Did he answer the questions at the workshops about why it took over 24 hours for somebody to come and take care of a dog that attacked somebody at Archie Anderson Park? Why?
Well, he's been in the job for maybe 90 days, so I don't know if he was around then. but-
Yeah, if I can address that.
Please
I
do.
came on board, thank you. I came on board in February. I spent
Oh,
20
he was
years
on the
with the
job
sheriff's
when I-
office prior to that. And I can tell you that sometimes addresses are hard to find. It happens in the county, it happens in the cities, it happens a lot. I can't justify why nobody responded within 24 hours. I can't answer that. It's the first I've heard of this. But as far as the numbers, I came here today to answer some questions. I wasn't prepared for giving another presentation. I have given presentations to local cities. I'll be speaking in Longview. Since
I'll
you
be
live in
there.
Longview on Thursday. And you're obviously welcome to be there and see the entire presentation. But these are issues that we're working on. We have a staff of 4 animal control officers to cover the entire county. So we work hard at trying to answer all the calls for service that we have. Each jurisdiction is different and unique and has their own issues. Obviously, the population densities in Longview and Kelso are where we spend most of our time. So we are trying to catch up. We're trying to do better. And I can't testify to what's happened in the past. But going forward, I can tell you that I'm working hard to increase our presence in animal control. I'm trying to improve their equipment. Our officers don't have radios. We have a truck that broke down the other day. So that leaves us with 1 truck short that we can't afford to replace. We're doing what we can with what we have, and we're doing the best that we can right now. So I'm working hard at fixing those things. I've been here, like I said, for 2 months, and I've got a lot of work ahead of me. And I'm aware of that, and we're willing to do that.
Okay, so this incident happened in March and your officers have cell phones. Your officer called the person. I'm just curious. Cell phones, they have GPS. It's not that hard to find an address. It really isn't. I've done courier work. It's not that hard to find an address in the Highlands. It's not that hard to find an address in Kelso. It's not that hard to find an address in the county. I'm just a little frustrated that, first of all, being thrown off, but you know, whatever. If the commissioners want to blow it off and everybody else wants to as well, that's fine. To each his own.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. I did attend the workshop. And at the workshop, we asked for last year's budget for financials. Did you guys ever receive those? Because I hadn't seen those yet.
If I recall, you asked for this year's
Yeah.
budget, which we don't have yet.
You don't have yet.
I was hoping to have by July.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just if I may.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, it's very easy to get upset about anecdotal stuff. So I'm always going to caution people about that. I'll also caution people about a percentage. If the Humane Society was underfunded substantially, 10% might not even be enough. We don't fully know that. And I'm very nervous about condemning someone a priori without getting a full picture. My own impression, and I can't justify that impression, is that there hasn't been a real strong presence of the Humane Society. I've been to their facilities in the past, and it needed help. It really sounded like they were on a shoestring. What we can make of it now is looking ahead, going forward, accepting the gentleman's statement that he is going to improve things, but he can't do it without the funding. So I'm happy to go ahead with that at this point.
Yeah.
I appreciate the workshops. I would also appreciate with doing that, at least a one-page summary of last year's and over history. It's a continuing business and we look at trends. We don't necessarily go on 10% or 50% or 300% as our state budget and stuff go at, but you can give trends and you can show the need, and that includes the services to the county and communities. Thank you.
And I'll just say that we did provide that when I gave my presentation.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about getting that information as you move forward. I think we did give some grace because you've been in the job 2 months and kind of thrown into this thing and so. Vicky. You had your hand up. You're on mute. Vicky, if there.
Yeah, I couldn't figure it out. My
Okay.
only question is I had heard at another meeting that I attended that our shelter has become a kill shelter. Is that true or false?
We have not become a kill shelter. We do euthanize animals. We don't euthanize them just for space in the shelter. If they have a need to be euthanized, we will euthanize them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I don't see any others. Any other? Yes, sir.
Oh.
You're the former undersheriff of Cowlitz County, aren't you?
That's correct.
That's what I thought. I remember when there wasn't a Humane Society, and my family has several dealings with the so-called Humane Society. The first time one of the board members of the Humane Society had a very intelligent idea to take feral cats and then spade them and then re-release them into the county. That year they came up with that idea. I had to shoot 9 feral cats that were killing squirrels in trees in West Cowlitz County. That was a brilliant idea. My father, who was alive at the time, considered that idea ineffective. Years later, of course, we've had many dealings with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. Thousands of dollars worth of damage. And now with the hoof rot in Game Management Unit 504, in the past 2 years, I've had over 9 carcasses dead in my field from hoof rot. The state doesn't do a goddamn thing. Let's go to the Humane Society. The last years of my parents' life, they had a pedigree rat terrier, specifically for hunting rats. There were a couple of caged mongrel dogs at the end of our property. They caused a $3,000 vet bill because they attacked this pedigree 3 times, ripping off, or apparently ripping off his front paw and leg. And at that time, the sheriff's department was notified they didn't want to have anything to do with property or animals. And then came the Humane Society. After the $3,000 vet bill and a court case, the mongrel dogs were still alive and they killed the pedigree rat terrier. And all we got was a notice hung on a doorknob with a cockamamie story that the dog jumped in the kennel of the mongrel dogs, written by a Humane Society so-called officer. So $300,000 is, in my opinion, and my personal experience, a waste of money. And I looked at the contract and another one, item 5, license fees. And it says, anytime that license fees occur, all such fees shall be paid directly and retained by the county, not the Humane Society. But yet you're prepared to give them $363,000 in change. Again, ineffective, and my past experience, a waste of money.
Anybody else? Hearing none, seeing no hands, I would call for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agreement with the Cowlitz County Humane Society as has been discussed at this meeting and previous meetings.
Seeing nobody approaching, no hands, I would call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
I also vote aye.
I also vote aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Mr. Chairman,
Coming.
the auditor would like to make a short announcement. Would that be acceptable to you?
Yes. Carolyn?
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
commissioners. I really appreciate the opportunity to bring up topics that are of interest to the public. Just very briefly, I wanted everybody to know that candidate filing is rapidly approaching, and our office is hosting a candidate filing training this Friday in this building on the first floor at 3 p.m. And this is for anybody that is interested in filing for office this year. If you want to learn more about how to file online, how to file your PDC paperwork, and candidate submissions like statements and photos, that's what we're here for. So again, I appreciate the opportunity. Just wanted to let people know.
Thank you, Carolyn. Okay, I'll, because we're rapidly approaching 10. I had one item I wanted to, and I don't see her here, but from the state of Washington, we got an enclosed certificate of good practice from the County Road Administration Board out of Washington State, and it goes to our road engineer for you know, just the job she does on her roads and stuff. So I wanted to recognize her for that. Is she online, Susan? So we have this for you, and we'll get this delivered to you. And I just you know, I think anytime our people get some recognition from the state for the job they do and whatnot, we need to recognize that. We'll get that over to you. I now know where your office is anyway, right?
Thank you.
So thank you for your work.
Yeah, if I might add, I seldom use the word proud, but I think Susan does her job in a way that we should be proud, and I am.
Yeah, yeah, we appreciate you being part of the county, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, we need to, I apologize, but we need to move on to the Board of Health meeting. So we'll close this one out and then rearrange and get Board of Health up here and open that up, okay?
Is it the same login? We just continue.
Okay, thank you.
So no additional citizens comment.
After the Board of Health.
Okay.
Can we delay Board of Health? It's a time event, so we'll take that and then get to citizen comments.